Yo, we up in the ring, breaking news with a jab. Ringside ramble, got the stories you grab. Video clips, front row, you won't miss the brawl. Big hits, KOs, we got it all.
Welcome back to Ringside Ramble. It's me, Niall, here bringing you all the latest news, views, and breakdowns from around the world of professional boxing. In this video, I'm going to be giving my reaction to the news of the return of Callum Smith next week as we record this on the undercard of Sonny Edwards and Galal fight. Yeah, discuss his comeback and his career so far and what I think is next and what should be next for Callum Smith, and can he ultimately win a world title again? Of course, former super middleweight champion, can he reach the top of the mountain once again, whether that be at 175 or even at cruiserweight, who knows? So yeah, before we get into today's video, please don't forget, if you like what you see, if you enjoy my content, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel. First of all, really appreciate everybody that subscribed so far. Nearly at 100 subscribers now, which I'm very thankful for. I know it may seem like a small milestone to some, but it's a big milestone for me, who's just starting this channel out and is a boxing fan with a passion. So yeah, subscribe to the channel, like the video, follow us over on X. Always great content to engage with there. If you enjoy what you see, I'd really appreciate it. So yeah, let's get into today's video. As I mentioned, it was announced a couple of days ago now that Callum Smith, the former super middleweight champion of the world, will return next week as we're recording this on November 30th at the Resorts World Arena in Birmingham on the undercard of the huge domestic clash between Galal Foy, the standout amateur, phenomenal amateur, and Sonny Edwards, the former professional world champion. So yeah, Callum Smith, another big addition to what is going to be a big card with a big main event. And it's good to see Mundo Smith back out. Of course, the opponent is yet to be announced. It'll be an easy night's work for Mundo just to get him back in there and shake off the ring rust after so long out of ring. Of course, he was last out in January of this year and suffered a bad loss at the hands of Artur Beterbiev. There's no shame in that whatsoever. He was badly beaten and stopped, but Beterbiev, say no more. We can't say anything else that hasn't been said already about the phenom that's Artur Beterbiev, one of the biggest punchers of all time, and he's just beaten Dmitry Bivol to become the undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world. So yeah, there's absolutely no shame in that. I always enjoy seeing Callum Smith out there. I'm a big fan of his. Of course, he broke in at super middleweight, and he kind of took super middleweight by storm with the size. His dimensions for 168 pounds where, he was huge at the weight, and I liked him as he was coming through the ranks. He's big, rangy, composed, very technically solid, a very crisp puncher, good at controlling the distance with his shots. I mean, as he was coming up, he just blitzed through domestic level and European level. We remember the Rocky Fielding fight, 1 round. Mohammedi, a European level, 1 round. And he seemed to be a world champion in waiting, the next British boxing superstar with his size and his attributes and his power at 168 pounds. It went a bit quiet then while he was kind of waiting on a WBC mandatory shot against Andre Durrell, I believe, at 168 pounds. It kind of went quiet, his kind of momentum in his career, but then he enters the World Boxing Super Series, the much adored World Boxing Super Series at super middleweight, and it was an interesting run. It was a run that came under a lot of criticism. Of course, he was supposed to fight the likes of Jurgen Bremer. Bremer had to pull out. He fought the kickboxer and MMA star Nicky Holtzkin. Took a lot of flack for that fight, how he couldn't stop Holtzkin or really put a dent in him. I don't take much kind of credence in that narrative. Holtzkin kickboxers, MMA fighters, tough men. So to not stop him was no shame. Beat Eric Skoglund. Eric Skoglund was a very good fighter, unbeaten at the time. And I think Eric Skoglund would have proved what a good fighter he was and what a good winner was for Callum Smith if he hadn't kind of tragically had his career cut short with the brain injury before he was supposed to fight Rocky Fielding. So yeah, he won that. That was a good win. That was an underrated win. And then in the final, of course, he beats the world champion George Groves. Groves was a favourite going into that. He dispatches Groves. Was Groves past his best? Yeah, he was, but still, I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves for that win. You know, when that win is brought up or first mentioned, it's that Groves. People say that Groves was shot to bits, not how good Callum Smith was. So I think Callum Smith deserves a lot of credit for dispatching George Groves the way he did. You know, Carl Froch couldn't do it in that fashion. I know he had a big one punch KO on the rematch, but that early to just blitz him, yeah, I think it was a very, very impressive win by Callum Smith to win the World Boxing Super Series. Yeah, so he wins the world title, the WBA super middleweight world title. Of course, he has the controversial decision against Ryder, widely beaten by Canelo Alvarez. No shame in that. And then, you know, he kind of, his momentum hit a brick wall, the momentum that he had. And, you know, people thought he should have done more for the hype that was around him early on in his career, you know, and what people expected of him as he was blitzing his way through the levels. But yeah, post Canelo Alvarez, he moves up to light heavyweight, and you know this is where a lot of people expected big things. You know, a size that fits his dimensions more. Yeah, you know, suits his dimensions better than boiling himself down to 168. So yeah, still more kind of relative inactivity. He beats Castillo, huge knockout. Beats Bauderlique, you know, good win against a solid fighter, and then fights Arthur Beterbiev. And a lot of people thought he'd cause Arthur Beterbiev trouble, and I was one of those people. More Phil me. I thought he had the size, the range, the power, the boxing kind of IQ to catch and age and slowing down Beterbiev. But no, he proved the scary Russian proved how much of a monster he is. He just broke down and stopped the bigger, longer man. Yeah, a systematic breakdown. So there's no shame in that. A loss for Callum Smith at that level. Um, but it puts him in an interesting position now where at 34 years old, he kind of has one more crack at a world title in him, you know, before he kind of calls it a day. You'd imagine at this stage of his career, you know, he's had a relatively long professional career now. He's 34 and he can't afford any more inactivity, you know, that we seen before he entered the World Boxing Super Series, that we seen post Canelo Alvarez. You know, he needs to keep busy, keep active, because he has the tools, he has the attributes to cause a lot of people problems. You know, I think if when he beats this opponent, should I say next week, he will. It's to shake the ring rust. He you know, he needs big fights. You know, I think big fights domestically will be the next step for him. There's a lot of interest and options domestically for Callum Smith, heading into 2025. There's the likes of Anthony Yard, Lyndon Arthur. He smokes Lyndon Arthur. Callum Smith, he's a couple of levels above him. Yard, I think he's a couple of levels above Anthony Yard. You know, a lot of people think that'll be a close fight, and I'm a fan of Yard, but you know, Callum Smith does everything better than Anthony Yard. There's not one thing Anthony Yard has, whether it's speed, power, IQ, you know, durability. There's nothing that Anthony Yard has that can beat Callum Smith. I think Anthony Yard is a very overhyped fighter. You know, he's exciting. As I mentioned, he has kind of positive attributes. He has a fast jab and he has big power, but he is very flawed. I think Callum Smith is a level or two above Yard. And then there's a huge domestic fight that could happen against Joshua Buatsi. I would love to see that fight. I think Smith versus Buatsi is an excellent fight, as a headliner. It'll do major business in the UK, selling out an arena somewhere, you know, one of the relatively smaller arenas. I think it'll be a really, really interesting fight. I really do. You know, as I mentioned, the kind of positives that Callum Smith has, Buatsi has them as well. He's not as big of a puncher, but he's quick. He has the IQ, he has the technical skill, and from his amateur background, he has the composure, he has the shot selection. You know, I'm a big fan of Joshua Buatsi. I think he's really coming into his own now. At this stage of his career, you know, a lot of hype around him when he first turned over to the pro ranks, of course, because of his amateur career. But I think he's really kind of finding his feet now in the pro game finally. And a Callum Smith, Joshua Buatsi fight, I think makes a lot of sense for both men. You know, it's a real crossroads fight for both men, and the winner, the winner has basically put himself next in line for a world title shot. The loser, it's a long way back. So I'd love to see Joshua Buatsi versus Callum Smith. Um, in terms of a winner, I don't know. It's so hard to call. Uh, you know, say Callum Smith wins or loses, could he become a world champion again? Of course, he lost to Beterbiev. No shame in that. Everybody has. Bivol, a wonderful, wonderful fighter. If you fought Bivol for a belt, uh, Bivol would be favourite, rightly so. But I think Callum Smith has a really good chance of being the best of the rest if the belts become fragmented. If Beterbiev retires, moves up, uh, you know, these belts become kind of fragmented. Even the IBF belt, it's a poor division outside of the champions, should I say, the champion, Beterbiev, Bivol. Outside of that, Callum Smith is still one of the best in the world for me at light heavyweight. He really is. He has the size, he has the power, the technical kind of fundamentally how strong he is fundamentally. You know, it's a really poor division outside of that he could have a lot of success in. I mentioned the big domestic fights, Arthur, Yard, Buatsi. He could beat them all. He could very well beat them all and pick up a world title at 175. Absolutely. Could he move up again to cruiserweight? That's another question. People early on, even when he was at super middleweight, said he could, finish his career maybe at cruiserweight. He has the size to do it. Could he pick up a title there? Who knows? Probably a bit early to say that when he hasn't even kind of entertained the notion of moving up yet. But there's the likes of Zurdo, Joy Apatoya, Mikhailian. I don't see why Callum Smith couldn't beat Noel Gavor Mikhailian anyway. No disrespect. He could give Zurdo a real fight. Of course, that fight was muted when both were at 168. So, Zurdo is a former super middleweight himself and light heavyweight. So it wouldn't be a huge size disadvantage between Smith and Zurdo. Joy Apatoya, of course, the IBF and Ring Magazine champion, rumored to kind of be facing Zurdo next, which would be a huge fight. A lot of people think Joy Apatoya is fairly unstoppable at this stage, but who knows? Zurdo could be him, and Smith could give him a fight if he moves up. So I do think there's possibilities of Callum Smith winning a world title again, whether it be a fragmented belt at 175 or if he moves up and fights the likes of Zurdo. I think he could do very well. I really do. I'm a big fan of Callum Smith. I can't wait to see him back next week at the time of recording this, and hopefully it needs to be an active and a huge 2025 for the former super middleweight world champion. So yeah, that's just my quick reaction to the return of Callum Mundo Smith next Saturday night, November 30th, at the Resort World Arena in Birmingham, England, as he returns on the undercard of Galalia 5 versus Sonny Edwards, fighting for the first time since January, and when he lost in a demolition job against Arthur Beterbiev. Yeah, let us know what you think in the comments. Are you happy to see Mundo back? How much of a fan are you of Mundo? Can he win a world title again? How would he get on at domestic level first against Buatsi, Yard, Arthur, those type of names? And can he have one more push for a world title and win a world title at 34 years of age? Let us know what you think in the comments. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, please, if you like the content, subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, give it a share, follow us over on X. Always great content. Always love engaging with boxing fans like myself. So yeah, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, speak again and take care.